Hello, and welcome to the T2 Hubcast with me, Tracy Roberts, and him,
Scott Morrison.
Hi, Scotty.
How you doing?
I am really good. Today's manic, isn't it?
I've come back after not being in the office for probably 10 days, which seems like a long time. And
the world has moved on.
It's like, hello, it's me.
I was like, do you fancy a chat on a podcast? And you were like, yep. And I was like, now? And you're like, okay.
Yeah. I love being ambushed. You know this.
Yes. It's been really busy, but what we've decided to do is we had a couple of things down on the podcast list that we kind of wanted to share with our listeners and the people viewing us. And we thought, actually, it could be good to break up some of the busy kind of stuff that we're, deeply working on with a couple of things that will just maybe spark a little bit of thought-provoking stuff for the people who are spending time listening and watching our podcasts.
Also serves a little bit of light relief for us too, right?
It does. And we know that actually in some of the stuff we're going to talk about today, we're going to recognise that how we kind of realise that about our team and how most of us in the team have this ability to get into deep work, but equally quite a lot of us have to have that little bit of an outlet somewhere. So I guess the conversation we're going to talk about today is probably going to help us explain that in a bit of a better way, isn't it? We've been working with so many organisations recently on whole group kind of projects, but also projects that are, I guess, taking specific teams in organisations and doing a little bit more deep work with them. Yeah. And we've also just come back from the retreat, which was magnificent. And what we kind of really were talking about when we're kind of summarising some of our takeaways was how quickly that team managed to gel together, how they started to understand the part they all played and also the part they played as a team very, very quickly. And that brought us onto the subject of team dynamics and how it's super, super important to obviously always start with self and understanding yourself, but then actually do organizations then look at it from another lens and think, okay, so if everyone individually understands themselves, that's brilliant, because then we can try and stay within our best self wherever possible and I guess tailor our communication slightly. But what about if we looked at whole team environments and the way we see the world, our worldview within that organization, if you like? What could that tell us about, I don't know, things like how we can understand potential dysfunction? Yeah, that's probably the way to explain it. So, clashes in ways of working, clashes in communication style, how we're going to approach that goal maybe slightly differently if it's not made very clear how we're going to approach it, how the miscommunication can kind of crop up from time to time, or a lot of the time in some of the organizations we've worked in. And actually, it makes us just more inefficient, doesn't it, if we don't understand, I guess, the whole ways of working of the team as a whole.
And it's not just that if we don't understand, there's got to be a will to understand as well. A lot of people get caught up in siloed work, and there's a lot of responsibility, a lot of drivers, a lot of goals, especially this time of year, as we know, coming towards the end of our year. And people are trying to get across the finish line. And in doing that, you can be a little bit tunnel visioned and, you sort of come away from the humanality of communicating, team play, teammanship, all of that stuff, even checking in with other people. And if they're not checking in with you, you're not checking in with them. It all comes to a little bit of a discord, doesn't it? So it makes a difference.
And the feedback kind of maybe where it's been really high and you've been feeling comfortable offering feedback to individuals in the team when you're under pressure or, patterns start to emerge and you're just trying to get across the line, you're less likely maybe to lean in and say, hey, listen, the way that you did that thing there wasn't as efficient as possible, or the way you communicated to me in that moment didn't really land the way, that you probably wanted it to. So I think it's important to definitely think about it from a sort of holistic perspective and the situation and the environment for sure. But it's all, ultimately what this is about, and it's something we talk a lot about, is how can we form the best possible relationships? The foundation's got to be there to then have the best possible conversations. And I think if people have spent enough time getting to know themselves and how they fit into that jigsaw puzzle, so to speak, and how they project themselves and how they're kind of heard at the other person's ear, I think the reality is the next step is, okay, if that's the reality, what does the conversation look like between you and I as part of almost a psychological contract? How are we going to move forward? How are we going to agree, what communication looks like for you and I?
Sure.
And here's the other thing. What about when things don't go so well and it gets a bit bumpy, how are we to get back on track? And I think a lot of organisations could probably say that does happen between individuals when things get a bit tough. We don't agree on something and then we kind of get passive aggressive about it and stop communicating completely. Or actually department against department. Sometimes we go in and we go, well, it's not us, they're them over there, they do this thing here and we're just trying to do our job. And the reality is somebody at some point should have gone, whoa, hold that thought. Can we just go back a bit and go, what went wrong? And ultimately, what can we do to get back on track? Because can I just remind you that we're all striving for the same goal at the moment and it's got a little bit bumpy. And I think if we understand our team dynamics, we're more likely to be attuned, like you say, to what would be the right thing to say in that moment and how to get back on track. Yeah. So many people something's broken down and they've never got back on track in an organisation. I know people who've held a grudge against someone for years.
Oh, absolutely.
And department against department.
Well, it does. You get your internal wars, don't you? Like you just saying that there. In my former role, I used to share an office with 3 other managers and we all had the collective goal of seeing that organisation to a financial target at the end of the month, quarter, year, all of that good stuff. But because the pressure was on us as individuals, you would focus more on your siloed journey than the collective, though we shared the room. So essentially, we should have been the most close-knit team with the most collective outcomes. But there were times where that definitely didn't happen. And because you would bicker and fight over resource and be the hours or bums on seats or the need of another department to focus on what you need to get from them rather than somebody else. There were times in that room where we could all 4 be in there and all be in a grump of each other and it'd be deadly silent for a full day. And that's crazy to think, whereas on another day, it's non-stop. It's chatter, it's banter, it's
sharing
work,
best practice.
Yeah, it's all of those good stuff, but at a pace and at a speed with real positivity and real cohesion to getting something done. But then, as I say, on other days, because I've taken something from somebody else's resource pile or vice versa, you find yourself sat as close as we are across the desk, literally not speaking.
Or defending yourself, right?
Yeah, or defending yourself to someone else in the room while the other person's there so they can hear it, And it's crazy because if we don't know what that love language is between you and that person, how to set the record straight or how to put things on an even keel so you have your say, I have my say, and move on without fear of being shot down or being called out for being in the wrong or trying to keep your chimp under control, whatever it might be. But it's understanding that individual chat.
And that comes down to environment, doesn't it? So I guess if we're going to sort of summarise where we might see some of these changes, I think you pointed a few great things out there. If you're under pressure, that's one thing. Sometimes competition, healthy competition becomes not so healthy competition in an environment, and it's robbing Peter to pay Paul all the time. Sometimes it's just, like you say, a shift in direction with the business, a big change that's taken place and it's affected one team and not the other team, or certain members of one team and other members are okay. And sometimes it can just be the pace, can't it? The pace for some people is great. For other people, it's like their worst nightmare. So I think if you just put all those different personalities into the equation and how they'll react in those situations to different stuff, what we do have to recognise is that not everybody will be happy all of the time. Some people will be externally smiling and internally screaming. Some people are externally screaming because they need some support. But ultimately, I guess what we've got to recognise there is if we can get in front of that a little bit by understanding the lens of that team, so to speak, as well as everyone taking responsibility for their individual lens, I think we're more likely to make better business decisions, have a lower turnover, have higher productivity and all those things.
Yeah, and in that, I think when we talk about the basics of the individual, as long as everybody in the room's adult enough to take ownership of themselves and their behaviours, their communication styles, their energy, positive or negative, whichever it may be. As long as people are able to do that and be aware of how they're impacting with emotions, etc., I think that's a big key for that.
So I guess in terms of obviously what we've got to consider, we've got obviously we have the human iceberg that we always talk about. So we've got the top of the iceberg, which is our traits, behaviours, personalities, all the stuff that you let people see on a daily basis. What we project. Usually, for in most instances, you can, if you work with people a lot, you can see a shift in the top of the iceberg, I think it's fair to say. And if you're even more intuitive, and as we know, some people do just sense things, they've got a spidey sense. You and I've got a spidey sense, I think. We can tell when someone's a little bit not themselves, even when they're projecting that they're fine. You can tell all those things. And then obviously underneath that, you've got the motivations, or the motivators, and the tool that we use in that respect is print, although there are other psychometric tests out there. That's like why people are like they are, how they see the world, and actually what motivates them and makes them operate in their best self. And underneath that, what we've been looking at is we're doing more work with Rich Diviney and the attributes, and we've just started to roll out workshops on that. We launched at the retreat and it went down a storm, didn't it?
It blew minds, I think, because it's a simple tool, not to downgrade it. It's a simple tool with a massive impact.
Oh, huge,
because when you talk about attributes, people go, yeah, I've got them. But then understanding,
but do you understand them?
right? Yeah. But understanding them, understanding them correctly in relation to how it might serve me on the up, how it might serve me on the down, and seeing that it's not a case of I have it or I don't. I have it at different measures, but where does it serve me at what points, and to benefit or to detriment? And that was a massive thing for the guys, I think, at the retreat.
So there's 3 things straight away that, is underpinned by that sense of purpose, or your value system, if you like. And all 3 of those sort of tools, we, not to obviously forget social styles, which we use in abundance.
Huge.
Social styles is, the stuff that we look at the top, print kind of underneath, and then we're looking at attributes and sense of purpose. But there's a direct link between all of them. And in an ideal situation, we'd walk along the street, someone would have a badge on with their print, and we'd go, oh, great, I jam with you. They look happy on the surface, brilliant, I like you. And then we go, oh, what they're really good at is task switching and making decisions. So they're exactly what I want in my team. Unfortunately, that's not what happens. So what we do is we try and do the best we can by getting to know each other's personality styles, how we communicate. If we're really lucky, like the people who work with us, we get to understand our motivations and actually, what serves us well and puts us in a good space versus a bad space. And if we're really, really lucky, then we look even further into it and go, actually, here's the attributes that I'm high in and low in. Where does that serve me well? Where doesn't it serve me well? But what we're talking about really is an interplay of personality styles. We're talking about working styles, ways of working. That's a big thing. Yeah. Communication, preferences, and the way they communicate with others. Decision making is a big thing. How people go about their decision making, the speed of which they work as well. Yeah,
the motivators to why they make that decision.
Absolutely.
We were only talking about this the other day, talking about whether it's risk, emotion, whether it's cost. There's a lot of different, there's 4 key ones, but there's 3 of them. But yeah, definitely.
Agility I put down here because I think for some people, again, it's down to that team environment. In a lot of situations, you've joined a team knowing that it's going to be what kind of pace you're going to expect. But I sometimes think people will look at a job and go, I can hack that. And then when they get in, it's like, crap, I really can't hack this because the agility that's required in this job and the pace of work is a lot. Other people thrive on that, right? So that obviously is something to offset. Yeah. And then obviously attributes and motivators. So there's all those things in the equation. You could have, the same role as someone else and be built completely differently to them, in which case, you've got to think, how can we serve each other a little bit better? I always talk about how healthy is your relationship with people. So think of it like a barometer. Red at the top of the barometer it's a bit fiery at the minute. Yeah. Actually, I've been a bit snippy, maybe talking about like your colleagues that used to be in the office with you when something had gone wrong. And then there's blue right at the bottom, which is actually very rarely speak to that person, interact with them. I always think of it like, can all your relationships, especially the ones that are really important, be really nice and cozy and warm? Kind of up at the top of the pinks, where actually we're nurturing them, we're putting energy into them in some shape or form. And for that reason, we're going to get something back from it. Yeah, then when we go to red or go to blue, it's easy to recognize that and bring it back to the center. And I think if you were really to think about the people that you work with, there are some people that you take them for granted a little bit. And naturally, they'll start to go a little bit blue if you don't put the energy in. So when you've got to go to them to ask for help, it's like that mate that comes and asks you to help him move house when you haven't seen him for a year. You're like, really? When you want a colleague to help you out, you want to be able to lean in and go, hey, listen, I really value your expertise and I could really do with your help right now. And for them not to think, well, what have you given me in the last? It's not about constant, how are you? It's keeping that kind of open communication and maybe getting them involved in things that, maybe isn't always their ballpark, but you just want their take on things. And then there's the people where you fall out and it goes fully to the red or fully to the blue, or something goes wrong and we don't recognize it in the moment. So that's one part of that team dysfunctional, whatever way you look at it. There's two people in that team that don't enjoy working together or whatever. So that's a piece of that jigsaw that really makes a difference.
It becomes awkward as well for everyone around it, right?
I bet you've had that before, because I definitely have. I've had, senior team members that work alongside me in either very cold kind of conflict down at the bottom of that bracket, where they just ignore each other in the meeting room. And when one of them talks, it's like eye roll.
I'm laughing because I had somebody move out the office.
Did you?
Do you know, I said I shared with 3 of the guys.
Yeah.
So the best way to describe it, of the 4 guys in the office, 3 were warm oranges into reds in personalities, in really. And then what I mean, I'm not trying to put that into some psychometrics, but I'm just talking hot-blooded, say what's on the mind, speaker thinkers, let's get it out there, passionate, let's get it done.
Yeah.
Whereas we had someone in the office who was very calm, didn't buy into the noise, always sat on the fence. Yeah, Switzerland, just sat there. He never, ever got flustered. He'd throw his idea out and then everyone would just shoot him down, and he took it really well. But when you get into it between the fiery personalities, as I say, we got into it once. And I think of the 3 of us, 2 had an agreement and the other one didn't. And as a result of the other one not doing it, they left the office, took the stuff out, moved back onto the floor, this, that. And it was months and months before we sort of, are you coming back? What are you doing? It was like, well, yeah, all right. But it was like you had to olive
really
branch that thing. But literally, it'd gone quiet, radio silence, whilst we was in same meetings, responsible for same areas, same staffing, things like that, for a good 3 months. It was quite odd. But
that definitely affects the people, like you were saying. That's not you directly, but everyone felt that, right?
Well, there's 4 teams between us.
Yeah.
And I don't mean, I'm on about service teams. So you've got your different teams, like your IT, your resource and planning, and then you've got the support guys in there. You've got, recruit, everything. Everyone in between was between us because we were responsible for a big group of people. So yeah, it become quite. I was all right because I knew the person, so it was like he'll be all right soon, but he needs to be left alone.
But that's because going into some of the stuff we're going to cover today, your natural ability to read that situation and go, okay, that person just needs a bit of space, then I'm going to wait the appropriate amount of time, then I'm going to revisit that conversation. You would never ignore that, let it go blue or red then blue or whatever way you want to, and walk away and leave it. You would go, okay, I can see that person needs to calm down, or we just need to go back and do an autopsy on this and discuss it properly, and then we'll move forward. You're not going to hold a grudge. But for some people, because of the way they're built, they're wounded. You didn't deliver what you said you were going to deliver, therefore you're no friend of mine. You took my resources, you're a Judas. There's all these little things absolutely. That you think, wow.
Or something as simple as you didn't side with my side of the argument. Yeah. You didn't take my weight in it.
But the reason that I guess we're covering that today is because even just by us sort of laughing about some of the things we've experienced, we can see the team dynamics have been shot completely apart in a lot of instances where those relationships haven't been safe, vital, repairable. People haven't revisited it and think, how do we get back in the cozy reds? They've thought, okay, I'd best stay away from this person and be passive about it and avoid collaborating with them. Or actually, every time I see them, there's going to be some sort of duel going on because, you've crossed me a couple of times and don't like that. And I think some of that is personal responsibility, but some of it is just thinking how that can affect the environment that you're working in. Yeah. I can definitely think of one person in my career that I think I kept trying to go back and repair a conversation, and that person was so red, if you like, that there was absolutely no way of doing that. So I got to the point where I went blue, and I just thought, I'll just stay out of the way and not collaborate. And if there was ever that person in that project, I would avoid my part of the project because I just didn't want to get into that conversation. So I think you can as well, it's good to acknowledge that some of you listening or watching might think, yeah, I've had a situation like that and I've tried to get us back to the red, into the pink, if you like. But that person's just not been open to it. And I think some of that is self-awareness, but some of it is also just maybe considering how we approach things slightly differently when we're collaborating with people, to give ourselves the best chance of success and to make sure things are repairable. And I think, some of that is self-awareness, but some of it is also just maybe considering how we approach things slightly differently when we're collaborating with people, to give ourselves the best chance of success and to make sure things are repairable. And I think some of that is self-awareness, but some of it is also just maybe considering how we approach things slightly differently when we're collaborating with people, to give ourselves the best chance of success and to make sure things are repairable. And I think looking at the tools that we've got, I think it really did make me think the other day, how we can use this in the best possible way. So we were running some print reports earlier on an organisation we were working with, right? It was a whole load of names. Give you a challenge this morning to do that when I was
only 123.
Only 123. And the reason that we were doing that was because when we're working with this organisation, we've been looking at quite a few complex things for them. So we've been looking at communication, been looking at leadership styles, definitely been looking at change and agility in that
agility in the change space is massive for these guys.
Yeah. And then the other side of it is just how do we get people to collaborate better? Because we know there's a little bit of groupthink going on in certain spaces. And also it's one of those things that in a lot of cases, we've always done it this way. And they're trying to come out with that style of thinking and actually get people, I guess, more on board with new ways of communicating, new ways of doing things and all those things. So it was important for me this morning, which is why I asked you to say, can you just help me for a minute? Because I'm just writing some of the content that we're going to deliver next week. Could you go and do some research for me and just find out what the split in terms of the communication styles are in there? And the way that we did it this morning in this particular case was to look at print profiles, because we're really fortunate that organisation has invested massively in unconscious motivators and figuring out what motivates people, why they do what they do, what's not going to be a good environment for them if you're going to look at it the other way. And potentially, here's the other clue, how they communicate, because that gives us an insight straight away when we're looking from the top down as to how that organisation is going to look and feel when it comes to all those things we're speaking about, working styles, how they make decisions, how agile they are, what could communication look like if it was great, and how do we actually make sure that there's a good visibility in the organisation in terms of what's going on? What's the communication plan look like? Because a lot of the conversations we're having with this organisation was, we feel like we are way over here in terms of the information we provide in the business or the organisation for people to understand where we're going, how we're changing things and all that jazz. But we just feel like the rest of the organisation thinks we're always hiding things and we're not telling them everything and they don't know the direction we're travelling.
There's a lack of transparency from one end, whereas the other series are showing bearing all.
So it got us thinking, let's look at actually what that organisation looks like from the perspective of motivators, and how they're going to take the information and how they're going to process the information. And then let's take that a stage further and think, what about the people who are making the decisions? How do they communicate naturally? What's the language they're going to use? And is that slightly disconnected from the people they're trying to reach?
Yeah, from the speaker to the ear, if you like. Yeah, what's that transition?
And guess what? That's exactly what we found, wasn't it?
Yes.
So when we went to look at it, we realised by just looking at the motivations that this organisation is highly fueled by I guess, emotional and humanistic tendencies. So people that are higher on that scale are very in touch with their feelings. And quite often, if they don't feel like they're getting enough information and it doesn't feel right to them, or it feels that it's unjust to people, or it's not been explained fully, or they don't feel they've got the tools to do the job right so they can do right by people, for want of a better term, then they're ultimately going to feel pretty pushed out. The other side of that is that if they've not been asked to, I don't know, give their take on something, or
they're not part of the journey. They're not part of the think set, if you like. How did we come up with this idea? What was the plan? What have I put into the air for this? What did I put into the cloud for everyone to view, see, listen? And as a result, what's come back for me to sit there and go, my input was part of the decision moving forward, or wasn't part of the decision moving forward, but it was heard.
Yeah, and I kind of understand why it was heard in that way.
So why we've gone in this direction.
And the reason that they would be put out by decision making like that, or just very one-dimensional, this is what we're doing, communication, is they don't feel part of it, but they also feel unimportant. And that's the important thing to land there. With people who are motivated in that way, they think, well, hang on, I really did have something to say, or I am a subject matter expert, or I really wanted to be part of this journey, but I feel like you've excluded me straight away.
Yeah.
So that was quite interesting for us to see. As an organisation, they were very, very much fueled by, if you're a print expert, needed and appreciated. And funnily enough, next down from that, perfect, correct and right.
Yeah.
And quite often, this is a bit of a toxic combination if you think about it. You know, we've got a whole lot of people who really care, about humans and how we approach things. And then therefore the communication has to, fall in line with that. And so people can really deeply connect with it. And then the ones in there are like, and we want to do things right. And we're going to do it with integrity, and we're going to follow it through, and we're going to get everything, all the ducks in a row. And for some people, head and heart, there's two kind of things at play there, and we've got to make sure we get that balance right. Then we did the analysis of the team communicating, and what we recognized with that team was that they probably are very direct in communication style, maybe don't dial into that
very
kind of
tell.
Yes. And sometimes that's not a bad thing, because there are certain periods of agility or change where actually we just need to be quite strict.
Sure.
But what we do recognise by looking at a lot of the models we use, like the Lippitt Noster model, the six elements of change, that we can be very good at being visionary, but we've also got to be really good at lining up all the other things. And maybe that's where the disconnect is, because for those people in the middle of the organisation, they've got to move things. They need to be communicated to in such a way where they can really deeply connect with things. So it got us thinking that actually, if organisations could know this, how could they amend their communications plan when it comes to projects, when it comes to change programs, and actually just when it comes to innovation? Because if let's just look at print as one separate thing. If you know people's motivators and what their role alignment would look like, it tells you what the perfect job for them is, essentially, if you read that, and also what's going to be a bit of a trigger for them. And if we look at the team as a whole and get an average to think about, okay, what's going to land best, we can really think about how we can adjust our comms, who we can bring forward sometimes to have a conversation before other people to make them feel more at ease. Are they going to be the type of group that really, really clings to, I don't know, in terms of what we need to go through change? The vision's really important, but actually, is it skills and resources that are going to test them?
Yeah, I was about to say that when you're doing something like that, it's all right going on the journey, but if people don't feel as though they have either of those skills or those resources,
they get anxious.
Absolutely. Even now we're going into a world of like despair. So
yeah. And then for other people, it's like, I've got no incentive. So if I know they're hugely motivated by Succeed and Achieve as an example, I'm going to think, okay, that's probably one of those heightened things that I need to consider. How can I communicate the benefits better to this group? Because they're probably going to connect with that. And I guess down the other end of it is there's people who like to be to plan and know the way ahead. So for them, it's not even really the vision. They just need to know, what do I need to do in the next 3 weeks? Tell me what I need to do very clearly, and give me the buff, like a bowling alley. Here's my buffers. Unless it goes outside of here, this is what you do. And if you give me that and keep giving me that for the next few weeks, I'm going to start to get momentum. I'm going to deliver, and I'm going to feel completely happy. I don't actually need to look that far ahead. I'm okay with that.
This is it. What's a roadmap to success, and what are my checking points?
Yes. Yeah. Whereas other people, they might have a tendency, if by knowing this print, to go out of the blocks too quick, not ask the questions, haven't considered the resources and skills, haven't considered the action plan, haven't got their route planner on to reroute if things go wrong.
They're completely heading in the wrong direction.
In the wrong direction. And then sometimes as leaders, we sunk in cost fallacy, we'll crack on and see if we can just proceed and make it work, and actually it doesn't work. So it makes a big difference. And for print, the other thing that we break down is thinkers, feelers, doers. Yeah. Which made us realise this morning, didn't it, with the scenario we're talking about? We had a very, very small amount of thinkers. Was that right?
So in the top layer.
Yes.
In the top layer,
less
we had
thinkers,
less thinkers,
doers.
more doers and feelers.
Yes.
In the next layer, we had a lot of feelers and thinkers and less doers.
That's right.
So you had a complete seesaw, if you like. There's a middle ground, but the seesaw between the doers and the thinkers, if you like, was a switch.
And that makes us recognise actually where some of the communication's not landing in the same way. Because we think we're communicating maybe more from a visionary perspective, but actually the middle layer, it's not the visionary stuff, it's important. It's the action plan, the resources, the skills, all those things. And then it's even the language, isn't it? The language is important for those three types of...
Yeah, 100%. And if you're a thinker feeler, not the doer, then you're going to be looking for context, you're going to be looking for a route plan, you're going to be looking for why. What's my why? What's the goal? What we're trying to achieve? Even the why of why we're doing it different as an example, not just why will it work.
Or why haven't we considered that as well?
Yeah. All of these things will be in there because you're going to think as you feel as, and how's this going to impact my people? How am I going to bring them along for the journey? There's all these type of things going in there. And the doers who are sitting there saying, I've communicated everything they need, and it could be a billboard.
Yeah.
And look how big the message is. It's huge.
Can you not read this?
Yeah, can you not see this? But that them 10 words for a statement. That doesn't cover everything.
They don't connect with it.
No, because they don't. Again, you've not set the scenario, the situation, the output, how it should land. What does it look like to you? How does it feel to you with me seeing this vision? How does that land with you? So how do you hear it as I'm saying it? And what would you change?
Yeah.
How could you change it?
That's important. That's important. What's the listening I'm talking into? Is it going to land it? Because it's only measured at their ear, isn't it?
Right, exactly. So who's your audience? And that's great. And we say this a lot of time. And in the sessions that we do, we talk about, it's not the, what's the right phrase, speak to people how you expect to be spoken to. It's not, it's speak to people how they expect to be spoken to. Because as I say, as an 8-3, me speaking to somebody who's a 1-5 at the speed and the intensity of an 8, I'm going to blow their heads off and they're not going to like it and they're going to feel invaded. The space is going to be overshadowed, all of that stuff. So it really does make a difference. Just saying I've said it doesn't quite cut it.
No, and I think that's maybe one of the things that I've definitely recognised working with loads of organisations recently around change projects is, when I show them the 6-stage lipid noster model, their head nearly comes off because they're like, this is so obvious, but we feel like that vision's very clear. And then we measure against the rest of the organisation, they're like, we don't connect with that. Or actually this part's not being communicated. And they're like, it's in a workbook somewhere, or it's like say it's on a poster, and they're like, yeah, but make it real for me. So we're trying to help people understand that. But the other thing, just going back to print for 1 minute before we move on to the others, is that is definitely an indication of how people will process communication, but also how they make decisions. So if you think about that top layer in that particular organization going, they're doers and emotion, and then less thinkers, they're going, oh, this feels right, let's take action. And maybe not taking that time to percolate as much, or go out to seek other advice from other members of the organization, or they maybe listen, but because they're so action orientated, don't really listen, or they listen enough to make people think that they've been heard, but then not do anything, which has a worse effect sometimes.
Or they listen for what they're after.
Yes.
For their buying signals. Oh, I've heard that. They're on board.
Hypothesis.
Let's go.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So it fuels their engine to drive forward because they've had enough of that, and then the rest are not listening for. They're just listening for the go signs.
Whereas the middle layer, so when it comes to decision making, they're going to be quite fast to act. They're going to be driven by not emotion, but like gut instinct sometimes, maybe emotion as well. And then they're going to feel like, great, we're going to make a decision for the good of the organization, but then maybe moving too fast and maybe not go through that 6-stage process of going, right, how do we communicate it? Who needs to know first? Because we don't need to blanket everybody with all this information. This is the thing about a good comms plan. It can be absolutely set in stages. You can think, right, these stakeholders here in this particular department, I know they're going to need this information to move this thing forward. And knowing what I know about how they take the information, they need to be told first, so they're on board as subject matter. Now, then we move to this team here, and they need it delivered in this way, and that's the way we're going to get them on board. And I think a lot of people think of change as, let's put this massive big project out there and then throw information at everyone. And we know people and stages are really important.
Yeah.
So that's part of the reason why, when it comes to the kind of conversations we're having, using that thinking, right, so if you've got more feelers in this room, what does that mean? If you've got more thinkers in the room, what does that mean? And if you've got more doers in the room, what does that mean? And then understanding your makeup, like you said. So for me, I'm a doer feeler, which makes perfect sense. I am someone who will hear enough information to make a really good decision, and then I'll go for it. And then later on, I will autopsy that to within 1 inch of its life, because that's how I'm built. And then I'll even rethink my conversations and think, did I land that right? But if you're a double doer like you, then quite often you have to force yourself to sit in it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So then think of that from a team perspective, how big a difference that makes. If you're sitting in analysis paralysis for too long, are our actions not as orientated to, for speed and agility? If you're being led by gut instinct, are you leaning out of the room for the data or the expertise to help, refocus yourself around the facts and less feels? And if you're focused on just facts and you're a thinker, sometimes you need to bring someone in with a bit of feels as well, right?
Yeah.
So knowing that affects the way you approach things, the way you do decisions and all the rest of it, and print is perfect for that. So we're hopefully going to help this organisation see the difference in the different layers and the organisation as a whole, because then they can think about the comms plan. But you can keep it really simple, right? So with something like social styles, some of the organizations we work with don't apply psychometrics. They just go top of the iceberg. How do people communicate around here? And what they recognize from the 4 social styles, from the Merrill and Reed theory, they will maybe recognize a bit of a pattern. So in a lot of jobs, a lot of same people will go for the same types of roles. So for instance, one thing I recognized in sales, probably you did as well, you will get a lot of expressive drivers.
Sure.
Yeah, because they are definitely more towards goal. But I would probably say actually, probably 50-50. A lot of people in sales are more towards the goal, but are good at
the relationship side.
Yeah, they're pretty good at the relationship. They maybe straddle a lot of people do. Whereas you'll go into some other roles, definitely when I worked in a particular role in the public sector, there was definitely more at the other side where we had more analytical aimables. And as a consequence, the speed was a little slower. There was a lot more pre-work went into meetings because people wanted to process it before they went in and made decisions.
A lot of 6 Ps.
Oh, yes, I know. But then over the other side had its benefits too, because the kind of environments I was in, it was fast, it was furious. But I would say there was less reflection at this side, too much reflection at this side. And as a consequence, sometimes we really have to think about our decision making in all those environments. So it doesn't actually have to be rocket science. Sometimes it is just, how does this environment serve us well? So if we've got a lot of expressive drivers and it is quite energetic and emotional and, okay, how do we apply some of the other side from time to time? If we have got a lot of people who want to know all the detail and plan to within 1 inch of their life and make sure everyone's okay, how do we make them feel better about some of these changes we're going to make? And here's the other thing, thinking about it in levels, is your whole environment the same because it's similar because people came to it for the same reason, or are the different layers in the organization different? So have you got more, so as an example, you might have more drivers, which we see quite a lot at the top.
Higher, yeah.
And then sort of in the middle, you'll get a bit of a mix of analytical, aimable, maybe some expressive in there. And then maybe towards sort of the next layer down, it'll depend on what kind of environment you might get more doers, as an example. Yeah. So how does that look? Because that is such a good way for you to be able to overview and think, right, what's likely to happen in this situation? What could we do to get ahead of this change scenario? How can I get people excited and motivated by knowing how they like to be communicated to? And for me, that's like, why wouldn't you want to know that? Introversion versus extroversion I wrote as well. You can have a bit of a feel for an organization, how it naturally sits. And even then, just taking those two, there's a whole spectrum of introversion, extroversion, as we know. But
we do.
But how do we approach our communication to make sure it lands and they feel involved?
The idea here is when we talk about these things, print and social styles, even if you're focusing on them, just understanding the 4 areas of print and then the 72, 74 different variations of where print sits in there. The idea here is if you use this correctly and you do take your time out with the teams at the different layers and assess what the makeup is, you create your own subtitles for each layer.
You do.
By utilising the tools. A lot of people who use these tools and therefore the message is missed or it's misunderstood or it's not delivered properly because that subtitle context for each one is by utilising, right, what have I got here? Is it thinkers and feelers? What have I got here? Is it doers and thinkers? What have I got here? Is it feelers and thinkers?
Who can I bring in and right. Where do we apply this?
And how do I think outside the box to bring somebody who might be a communications expert for that middle layer up into the top to communicate with what's needed there, to join the gaps, and then vice versa.
And say, here's what I would do,
and pass that down the layers.
Yeah.
So it works both ways, but like you said, the ownership there is, have I got it right? Do I know everything? Do I need help?
Yeah, and I think just from the perspective of just taking that kind of overarching approach to things with both print and with social styles, it's very clear how people want to be communicated to if we know those pieces of information. Yeah. And then, as you said, here's the other thing that's really good about this. In another organisation we were working with a couple of months ago, they were sharing the dynamics of each layer between each layer. And that really helped with stakeholder management because they were then able to look at individuals and go, okay, so I work quite often with that person who's my stakeholder a level up from me. I've got to influence them a lot to back my decisions. I now understand how they're made, but I also understand the pressure they're under in their circle. So I'm not just influencing that stakeholder to go, can you sign this off? I now understand how the decision making works up there and how they process things. So it's not just me going in and going, here's my elevator pitch based on you as a driver. Bullet points, by the way.
Yeah, bullet points, look.
You know, it's now, okay, and knowing that you have got a team of people around you who are very much focused on strategy, data, and there's less emotional kind of element to that. How can I communicate that better to help you help me get the buy-in? And then also there's just that whole, you know, if you guys are doers and we're thinkers, how can we make that work really well? You know, because basically, if you think of it that way, right, we've thought it through, we've got the subject matter expertise, and we pass it up and empower, this is the facts, and they go, right, let me go fight your battle for you and we'll win that, you know, we'll do this thing together. And I think that's a really positive thing, isn't it? Last one that we're going to talk about is the attributes, because obviously it's quite new to us. We're rolling this out across the UK in the next couple of months. We've done a couple of sort of guinea pig sessions, and they're, you know, you guys are all going through a boot camp next week to make sure we've got it right. Yeah. And we've been loving working with Rich on this.
We're going through Hell Week.
You're going to go through Hell Week. Like. Yes, we're going to put you surf torture out in the Humber, and we're going to get this
on the
right.
foreshore in the mud with telegraph poles.
Yeah. And do you know what? I love all sorts of tools that we can get, any psychometrics or anything. You know what? I'm a geek. I love this stuff. But for me, this is that next layer down. So where we've gone with communication, preferences and styles, and then we've gone to motivations and role alignment and working in our genius, and then actually how that affects our makeup. We go a stage further with this. We're now going, okay, part the skills bit to a degree, you know, part, you know, the experience you've had in certain areas. What I want to understand is what attributes are, you know, you naturally high in that we can tap into. Yeah. What are you naturally low in? And let's explore that, because actually as an organization, it's important for us to know that for how can we get you working in your genius enough to make you really enjoy your job? How can we avoid you being in prolonged periods working in situations where it's not going to serve you well, or you're not going to enjoy it, if you like?
Well, when we talk about these things, it's about creating that environment that helps the individual thrive.
Yeah, 100%.
That's what it's got to be. I know we talk a lot about the secure and safe environment, the psychological safety, saying these things, which is great. And obviously that's what we want as well. But the idea of being in an environment where you can thrive as an individual, as well as what's going on around the team, because all areas are doing it. But just being able to sit there and go, this is what I lean into, because this is where I really do bring something to the table. And everybody wants that. Everybody wants to be able to feel a part of what they're delivering. And
what we recognise within the attributes, of which there's several, and if you want to learn more about that, then get in touch, because we would be more than happy to talk to you about that. What we've recognised in that, there's, for most of us, was a direct correlation between our motivators and the stuff that we're naturally high in, and our shadow behaviours maybe, and some of the stuff we were naturally lower in. And it's worthwhile explaining that it's not that your high is good and your low is bad. It's about recognising what's natural to you and what you can play to for your strengths, what's lower to you and that you maybe have to tune into in certain situations, or when sometimes your high stuff can not serve you so well. You know, if you're high in decisiveness, I think you and I both got that. I think we can probably recognise times we should have backdoor boogied and thought, I'll ask a few more questions first before I take action on this. And then, funnily enough, you got accountability and so did I, and you got integrity and so did I, and you tried to tell me you're an 8-3 and you're not. You're definitely an 8-2, by the way. But the reality is that we can look at that and think, great.
Or maybe you're an 8-3.
I'm not. I am a 2 through and through, you know I am. But point being is that we can then get more granular and go, right, okay, now we're in a position where we've gone past that skills element. We know how we like to be communicated to, but actually how can we use this stuff in, you know, all circumstances to make sure people are operating where they should be in their genius. For me, like if you're naturally good at these things, then you're going to thrive off a situation where you get an opportunity to live into that. But here's the other thing. So what I landed on, don't know if you landed on this, was accountability, integrity, and decisiveness, conscientiousness, and discipline for me. Tell me you're in the forces without telling me you're in the forces is what I read from that, by the way. What does that mean for me? It means that it serves me well in terms of leadership most of the time. Means I'm always going to deliver what I said I'm going to promise. And it also means that I've got an ability to think, get my head down, get on with it. And I like to think that served me pretty well in my career. When does it let me down? The weight of the world on my shoulders constantly every single day is one way. And I think you can resonate with that. Too disciplined. So sometimes I'm in a position where despite the ability to maybe, I don't know, give something away or admit defeat sometimes, all the rest of it.
Very self-critical.
Yes, very self-critical. And then the kind of integrity side of things, I am so high on that I cannot be questioned sometimes, and it bothers me. So I know that it holds me back sometimes as well as some of my best attributes. But then the other side of it is some of my lower attributes are there for a good reason. That's the way I see it. They're not things I'd naturally lean into, often, narcissism being one of them. But equally, I have recognized that some of those things have served me really well over the years. And I guess maybe narcissism is quite a far-fetched one to look at, but I would definitely connect with the fact that's definitely one of my lowest, things about me. Yeah. Where that served me well is I think I've been able to, in certain situations in my career, remain humble and really connect with not losing sight of the reality of the value I'm adding to a situation and not feeling that my head's getting too big when I'm, progressing really well or whatever it might be. That's a bit of a far-reaching example, but it gave me some real food for thought about actually some of the stuff that I really love doing. I really connect with it, but I also realise when it trips me up. And I don't know if you made that connection as well.
Yeah, I look at mine, and when I talk about my career, I've spent a lot of time in leadership roles. And I think, so my top one's humour, then it goes decisiveness, accountability, optimism, and integrity. And for me, I think it sort of depicts the leadership that I project. I'm a leader that will lead by example. There's not one thing you will have to do that I haven't done already 10 times. I will support you in that. We'll be in it together. But ultimately, through accountability and through decisiveness, we are going to get to that end goal. Yes. Yeah. And that maybe rolls into your 8-3 part. But humour, I understand it is going to be a hard slog, and I am going to take you on a tough journey because I'm not always going to stand still. So I have to make a few light jokes and bring people back into my side, because I will put you in situations where I'm going to get you releasing a little bit of cortisol. So I am going to have to clear that red mist myself. So I'll create the red mist, but hopefully I'll take it away too. But ultimately, you can trust in me. My integrity, I will do what I said I was going to do. Yeah. So for the journey that I've put us on, it's a shared journey. You'll never be on it on your own. It will be a shared journey.
But you do put a lot of pressure on yourself too, right?
Yes. Oh, definitely.
And you're very hard on yourself. When, I could say to you, how was that gig, Scott? And you'll go, it was all right. And then we'll get the feedback and it's like 6 stars. and it's the same thing. It's you putting that pressure on yourself to deliver at such a level. But listen, the reason this is important is because ultimately it's another tool, isn't it? So when we did our team, it was interesting because we saw a really interesting split, didn't we? There was a lot of things that we had in common, which kind of lined up with T2's values. There was some stuff that stuck out. So when we looked at some of the drive attributes, we realized that Martin and I kind of tended to be higher on those things, and there was more collaborative stuff over here. And then we recognized the power of, the enablers in the office that make everything happen for us every day. But it did make us see where actually we could potentially fall into a little bit of a trap from time to time by not thinking of things in different ways. I guess maybe even approaching things with a little bit of haste sometimes just to get it done, Yeah,
you point there about how you view things. I think all of us in the office, you got myself, you, James, Martin, Sophie, all of these people that and Spence, all these people that would class themselves as fairly competitive, fairly out to get the result, to get across. Sophie in a fitness, you doing what you do, you're into your gym. I've always played football at decent levels, Martin's rugby, James at football, all these things, all of these different things. Spence doing what he's done in his history, right? But everybody's got a goal to achieve, everyone's gone there. And what we found, which was amazing, whilst we sat there and said we are super competitive to a fault, what we found was when we came out with the attributes, we all scored competitively low or lower than we expected. And the reason being is when we actually dug into why, we was competitive as a team. Always. It was never competitive as a solo effort. It was a competitive of, I need to see Tracy win, I need to see James win, I need to see Marty win, etc., etc. It was always about the team winning, not so much what I win as. Yeah. So it wasn't a siloed goal. The competitiveness is, my team win first, I come second. And that's something that showed out.
And there was two or three things like that, wasn't there? Where we all, I think integrity was another one that came up really high. And accountability as well. So we recognised that and we saw that in our team, but then we did see the differences. Yeah. And actually, sometimes when like we just shared there, where maybe we're some of the stuff that we're top on can affect the other guys. So like if we're decisive and I guess more assertive and trying to deliver at pace, and we've got people who are naturally more deep thinkers, we're task switchers, and there's other people in the office that are maybe more compartmentalizers, things like that. It was interesting to be able to say, okay, how can we make this work? So for me, this was just another thing for us to look at and think, okay, so the first question we ask is, with the low attributes, do you need them to do your job successfully? And if people have recognized that they've maybe come out a little bit lower and they'd like to improve on that over a period of time because I don't know future role or the way we're going to take the business, then of course they're going to put some time into that, and then they're going to lean towards the person who's really good at that attribute and say, what can I learn from you? And vice versa. You know, there's many people in this organization can learn. I joke about the sort of like task switching again, obviously opposite someone who's more of a compartmentalizer. I think if you're at both ends of the scale, you definitely need to learn from each other, because there's going to be periods where you're going to need to do both, right?
Yeah, you're
going to naturally lean towards one. But what it did make us think was how we can be more effective, and actually who do we need to dynamically subordinate to in certain situations. And it's not always the people you think.
Right, you just thrown out a lovely phrase that we are fully aware of, dynamic subordination, and it's something that we've been talking about now probably for just over a year.
Yeah.
Well, at least since the last retreat.
Yeah.
Or second, the first one. So while people are sitting there going, okay, that's cool, but what does dynamic subordination mean? Don't leave people out there. So do you want me to try and explain it? And then you can correct me if I'm wrong. But in the idea of dynamic subordination, it's where we find ourselves in leadership, but then dropping into followership, or going from followership into leadership, dependent on your skill set or your attributes. So if we're sticking with attributes here, if I know I have or I see something, and I'll give a very simple example, I'll go on mood, I'll go on vibe here, and we've had a heck of a month and we've really dug in, and the team are tired and the team are working towards certain goals to finish things off. I'm actually high on humour. I will drop a number of little funny bombs that will get that motivation high and bring that one up. And that can be where I'll step in to see the benefit of the team. And that's just one, but there'll be other sides of that as well. So if there's a set situation where somebody has a certain subject matter expertise in leading the organisation through change, as an example, and that's where their credibility sits, they will lead in that. And as a result of that, if that's not my skill set or my attributes bag, I will drop into followership because this person's going to lead us through that scenario.
And it's natural, right?
And it's it's where they stand up, but it's also about where you now decide to step down as that leader, as that change comes out of there and you've flourished into a different state. Someone else will then take the lead because that's where their attributes apply to that situation, and scenario, environment.
Matter rate or anything. It's or tenure or anything. It's just who's right in that moment. So it could be based on attributes, could be based on at that particular time skill, but generally there's a way that we make that decision as a team, and we all understand and respect each other enough to know who's going to step up and step down. So for us, it helped us understand that a little bit better. And it definitely made us understand more. Now when we fully understand how we all communicate, because we've been using print, social styles, all host of stuff for years. And there's loads of stuff out there that gives you a bit of an indication, you know. So for a lot of people, they might have done Clifton Strengths, they might have done work on insights, all those things. They're all similar in terms of they'll give you a bit of an indication as to communication and I guess the way you go about things. So it's not just to say that the things that we do are the only things that are out there.
No, there's lots out there, but
I feel like adding attributes to our arsenal has definitely given us that next level for us to be able to take teams and be more granular about how they can get things done, and also then allow them to then look at their role alignment a little bit, look at the future. You know, a great example I could give is, you know, for some people in the middle layer of management, as you said, they're in the trenches all day. They're with people, never doing stuff that they wouldn't ask other people to do, all those things, that they wouldn't do themselves. But then they're going to move their next role as strategic. And they take one look at their attributes and go, wow, I am not going to be naturally very good at that. What can I do now to start thinking about how I affect those attributes, and who can I go in and spend time with or go to advice for because they're naturally higher in that. Or when we're in a role and we know that these things, we've really tried hard to bring them up a level and we just know it isn't going to happen, not naturally, then we know the colleague that is good at that. And it's not about slopey shoulders. It's about actually that person is better at that than me. And there's probably something I'm better at than them. So we'll recognize that. And actually, as a consequence of that, it'll help us make decisions.
Yeah. And just to that doesn't mean it can't be done if your attributes are a little bit lower, because the strength will come from repetition. So taking yourself out of that comfort zone, not necessarily in the workplace all the time, but in your own personal space and time, to educate yourself and put yourself in that repetition phase to keep going and keep building and keep going, keep building. That's how it'll improve. It's not going to happen overnight, by the way, but it's definitely up to you to earn that and take yourself out of that comfort zone and really challenge yourself.
And with all of these tools, last thing I'll say on this before I just give like the three kind of tips I would give you is one person leaves, you need to just revisit it, even if it's just for a short moment, to think, what does that person take, with them? Yeah. And actually, how does that shape us? I was working with an organization a few weeks ago that was quite data orientated, and they had these two people in their team that were very creative, and they were, for those of you who know print, 7s and 4s, so it brought different energy for a start, and secondly brought creativity and definitely cunning in our attributes terms. One moved on because they were promoted, one left the business, and they were then back to a very, very different way of thinking because it was a very small team. Sure. And they didn't really recognize that until 2-3 weeks later when things started to just feel different. That was left. Yeah. And equally, if someone joins your team, that shifts the dial again. And it's not good or bad. It's just understanding what that looks like. So what I'm not saying is you need a workshop every single time that happens, but you definitely need to understand it and then be able to do your own maths. And we can help anyone that works with us on that. The three things I put down here is you've got to be able to apply this to real world scenarios. So when you go through the process of looking at this information, how can you then take that back and use it in real life? So when we workshop with things like this, we do that. We say, okay, now you know the makeup. What's your goals for the next year? How are we going to make that happen? Now we know what we do. Because in some situations, we get a bit of a deer in the headlights and we go, let's unpick that. If you're going to achieve that and you've got low amounts of that and that's going to be needed for this, what we're going to do? And people are like, do you know, I've never thought of it like that. I put down, you got to go through a discovery in some shape or form, whether it's, I'd like to think it's with us, but whether it's print, whether it's social styles, whether it's attributes, where it's all of those three things. So you've got the full picture of your team, which ideally you would have. Then you got to deep dive it. But not with us telling you what we think, because we're going to give you advice. And we're going to say, hey, based on the fact that you've got 80% task and goal focus and 20%, this is maybe what you might see. And you're going to go, yes, that is what we see. We're going to go, okay, what are you going to do about it? So you've got to deep dive it, understand it, pull it apart, different departments, department by department. How does that look? How does that play against that department? How does that individual play against that person over there? You've got
to unpick it and reverse engineer. What am I trying to achieve from what I've got now? And how does that work in reverse?
Absolutely.
You've got to do that, yeah.
And then you've got to deliver. Because after you've done that, you've got to go, right, now that I have this information, I don't want to put it in a drawer. I want to think, how do I deliver based on this? So it's 3 Ds. It's essential. And if you're going to deliver, what does that look like? And how are you going to go back and check that information has embedded itself? You're using it for good, if you like. And all those relationships are safe, vital, repairable, and people are nice and cozy. And they're not going to the extremes, because if you get that right, that is exactly what happens. Part of that, though, is, as you said, accountability in that team. And if there are people going bright red or blue, then someone's got to go, how do we sort this? Because that is going to affect the dynamics of how we do things. So there is a bit of radical candor in there too, which is for another podcast, I'm sure. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the advice I would give everyone that's kind of spending time listening and watching us now is, what does it look like? Have you actually really thought about what that looks like? It's great that you all know each other, in terms of personally, and you've probably done a lot of self-awareness, but how does that translate to a team? Yeah. And how does the team versus the team look? And how can you improve and discover, deep dive and deliver based on that information? And you know what? We can help you with that. So if you would like us to do that, then please get in touch. Do you like that? Do you like that sales pitch?
Segue into the sales pitch. ABC, always closing. Always be closing.
in reality, it's the stuff that really underpins all the other stuff we do, right? Because as soon as we know that information, we can deliver anything else based on top of that.
Listen, let me just throw my final piece in there. We have done 2 retreats now, and within those 2 retreats, we have done 3-day sets, and every single person that I speak to when we're coming out the back end of those retreats sit there and go, how have we created these bonds in such a short period of time? This is unreal. Like I don't feel the bonds at work as I do with the people I only met like 72 hours ago here. Yeah. And that's because we put you in situations, but we put you in environments and scenarios where you call on each other's strengths and weaknesses, heightened attributes versus the lower attributes, and you're doing the dynamic subordination. There's times where you'll really step up and you'll lead, but there's also times where you think, this isn't me, and I have to sit back down and I'll follow the next leader.
Usually when you're doing the sequencer challenge,
right?
That's
where everyone wants to sit down. But the point being is, we put you in those scenarios, and people could leave the retreat saying, if I can get these bonds in my workplace, there'll be no stopping us. And this is what it is. It's no fluke that this happens. We set out with this as the goal, and we use all of these tools from psychers, for those who are being psych, no, it's a combination of different things, but ultimately, these tools that we've just been speaking about really help us build that environment for thriving, for great communication, for transparency, for understanding, for psychology, psychological safety. All of these things 100%. Are massive, and they're built from these tools. And it's about people really sort of just thinking, right, how do I get this in my environment?
So get in touch if you need some help, guys. And equally, if you're a partner working with us still, and you'd like us to revisit your print dynamics, or whatever you think might help you at the moment, then get in touch. We'd be only too pleased to help. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, Tracy.
Enjoyed that chat. We will see you again soon for another T2 Hubcast.